More than 150,000 people at this hour plunged into darkness. The president declaring a federal disaster for the state, and we are already hearing reports of significant damage, of collapsed buildings, of people perhaps trapped under the rubble.
When I opened the door, more water rushed in, and all of my stuff flew out, and it just kept coming in. All I could grab was my wallet and my phone. That's all I knew to grab.
This is no longer a standard missing person report. This is a horrifying reality. CrystalMcDowell vanished in the final panicked hours before Hurricane Harvey slammed into the Texas coast. A catastrophic event that threatened to swallow the evidence of her disappearance forever. Her ex-husband, Steve, claimed Crystal had simply driven to Dallas to escape the storm with their children. But the physical evidence told a much darker story. While the city braced for the hurricane, investigators discovered her car abandoned in a Motel 6 parking lot, keys still in the ignition, left specifically to invite a theft that would permanently erase the vehicle, and whatever it contained, from the record. As investigators began to cross-reference witness statements with the timeline of that morning, the narrative they were being fed started to crumble. The evidence revealed a disturbing pattern, and as the search for Crystal intensified, the focus shifted from a missing person case to a high-stakes search for the truth. Baytown sits about 25 miles east of Houston, close enough to the water that everyone there keeps half an eye on the sky during hurricane season. In the summer of 2017, Crystal McDowell was 37 years old. She sold houses for a living, and she was good at it. Good enough that she'd become the main earner for her family. She had 2 young kids, a son and a daughter, and by most accounts, she'd worked hard to build a stable life for them. That stability hadn't come easy. Crystal's childhood had been difficult. Both of her parents struggled with addiction, and she lost them within 6 months of each other when she was just 11 years old. A couple of years after that, she survived an abduction and assault that would have broken a lot of people. She didn't let it. She moved in with relatives, finished growing up, and eventually found her way into a career she was proud of. First as a flight attendant, later in real estate. It was during her time as a flight attendant that she met Steve McDowell. Steve worked in shipping. Friends described him as easygoing, the kind of guy who was always up for a laugh.
Hey, Crystal, how you doing?
Great, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. What are you doing today?
About to jump out of a perfectly good airplane.
Jumping out of a plane, making your first skydive. Whose idea was this?
Steve.
Steve, your idea? So if she gets hurt, I'm blaming you, all right, buddy?
He has a really good life insurance policy.
Oh, cool, perfect. Are you covered in that policy?
Yeah.
Sweet. You're looking a little shaky there. Are you feeling okay?
Think so.
Think so? Uh-oh. I think Matthew broke your harness. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
So fun.
What was the best part?
The whole thing was the best
thing?
part. Yeah.
The 2 of them married, and over the years they had their son and daughter together. But the marriage wasn't simple. There were affairs, separations, and at least one divorce filing that never went through. They stayed together, on and off, for close to a decade. Partly by Crystal's own account, because she wanted to keep the family together for the kids. By early 2017, that had stopped being enough. Crystal filed for divorce again, and this time she followed through. There's one detail from that spring worth sitting with, because it matters later. In March of 2017, 5 months before Crystal disappeared, she called the police. She told them Steve had made threats to hurt himself and to hurt their children. It started when a school employee mentioned that Steve had never picked up one of the kids as expected. Officers got involved. Steve returned the children safely the next day, and no charges were filed. The divorce was finalized that June. Crystal and Steve agreed to share custody of the kids, and for practical reasons, mostly financial, They kept living under the same roof while Crystal renovated the townhouse they'd need to sell. It wasn't an unusual arrangement. Divorced couples do it all the time. But for Steve, it didn't seem to feel like an ending. People close to the family started noticing changes in him. He kept wearing his wedding ring. He changed his Facebook profile picture to an image of the Grim Reaper, and his banner read, "In loving memory." He was reportedly still planning to propose to Crystal again, on a family cruise the two of them had booked together before the split. Crystal, for her part, seemed to be moving forward. Her business was doing well. Her kids were doing well. And about 3 weeks before she disappeared, she started seeing someone new. A local jewelry store owner named Paul Hargrave, who was newly divorced himself. She didn't talk about the relationship much, but the people close to her noticed a change. 2 days before she vanished, Crystal posted something on Facebook. She said she'd never been happier in her whole life than she was right then. 48 hours later, she was gone. Friday, August 25th, 2017. Crystal had spent the night at Paul's house. Around 7:30 that morning, his home security camera caught her getting ready to leave, gathering her things while Paul was still in the shower. She had a full day ahead of her. She was supposed to pick up her kids from Steve's place, and she had a couple of work meetings lined up. As she walked out to her car, she sent Paul a quick text. "No traffic today," she wrote. She said she might take the kids somewhere fun if they wanted to go. She told him to have an amazing day and called him sweet. He wrote back that he loved her and that he'd always support her. By early afternoon, Paul hadn't heard from her again. He texted to check in. No response. He tried again a little later, this time sounding more worried. Still nothing. That evening, Crystal was supposed to be at her family's house, watching a big fight on television with everyone. She never showed up. Her uncle Jeff, who had helped raise her since she was a child, made the call.
Chambers County Sheriff's Office.
My niece, no one can get a hold of her, no one has heard from her, and I'm really concerned.
He told the sheriff's office that nobody could reach his niece, and that something felt very wrong. At almost exactly the same time, something else was happening across southern Texas. Grocery store shelves were emptying out. People were boarding up windows. What had started as a tropical system off the coast of Africa had grown into Hurricane Harvey, and it was about to become the first Category 4 storm to hit the United States in over a decade.
This is an ABC News special report. Hurricane Harvey.
We are coming on the air for breaking news. Hurricane Harvey barreling into the Texas coastline as a Category 4 storm with 130-mile-an-hour winds. It's the first Category 4 storm to hit the U.S. in over a decade, threatening record rain totals of up to 35 inches throughout much of Texas that could render some areas uninhabitable for months. More than 150,000 people at this hour plunged into darkness. The president declaring a federal disaster for the state, and we are already hearing reports of significant damage, of collapsed buildings, of people perhaps trapped under the rubble.
When I opened the door, more water rushed in, and all of my stuff flew out, and it just kept coming in. All I could grab was my wallet and my phone. That's all I knew to grab.
That night, Harvey made landfall. What followed over the next several days was catastrophic. Winds over 130 miles an hour, more than 30,000 people displaced by flooding, dozens of tornadoes spinning off across 6 different states. Rainfall totals that would eventually make Harvey one of the most destructive storms in American history, the deadliest to hit Texas in nearly a century. For most of the region, survival became the only priority. Roads disappeared underwater. Entire neighborhoods went dark. And in the middle of all of it, a missing persons case that had barely begun got pushed to the edge of everyone's attention. But not everyone forgot about Crystal. Her family didn't believe for a second that the storm explained her disappearance. And a few days in, That instinct got a lot harder to ignore.
It has been days since the mysterious disappearance of a Houston area realtor. CrystalMcDowell was last heard from August 25th, shortly before Harvey hit Houston.
Crystal's cousin received a text from someone who said they'd spotted her car. It was sitting in the parking lot of a Motel 6, about 13 miles from Crystal's home. The same car we saw at the very beginning of this story, half submerged, doors unlocked, keys still inside.
This black car right here, this Mercedes, 2 people got out of it, and it doesn't belong to them.
When investigators finally managed to reach the motel through the flooding, what they found only deepened the mystery. The car hadn't just been abandoned, it looked like someone wanted it stolen. The sheriff would later say it plainly. They didn't believe Crystal had parked it there herself. They believed whoever left it there was hoping somebody would take it and take the evidence along with it. If the flooding hadn't been so severe, that plan might have worked.
Now, a lot of people are wondering if the bizarre timing of her disappearance was the perfect storm to cover up a crime. This morning, the desperate search for a Houston real estate agent and mother of 2, Crystal McDowell, posting on Facebook, "Stay safe out there," the night before she was last seen. According to her boyfriend, Paul Hargraves, this home security video shows her the next morning heading out of his house and getting into her car on her way to pick up her kids from her ex-husband, who lives about 20 minutes away.
She did send me some text messages, basically that the roads were clear of what to do in preparation of the storm.
Hargraves showed us his last text message exchange with McDowell. Her last text message to Hargraves was, "And you are so sweet."
She wouldn't just get up and leave her kids. She wouldn't do that. So I think something's horribly wrong.
As the search for Crystal continued, investigators found themselves looking closely at 3 people: her new boyfriend Paul, her uncle Jeff, and her ex-husband Steve. Paul told police he'd been in the shower the morning Crystal left his house, so he hadn't actually seen her walk out the door. His security footage backed up his story, but it took him a few days to hand that footage over to the media instead of directly to police. A small detail, but one that raised eyebrows at the time. Jeff, meanwhile, had gone into the townhouse Crystal shared with Steve and gone through her things, trying to help however he could. Investigators worried that could complicate the case, even if his intentions were good. And then there was Steve. On paper, Steve was the most cooperative person in the investigation. He showed up at the station voluntarily, day after day, for hours at a time. He seemed to want to help, but the people who knew the family best painted a more complicated picture. Crystal's aunt described him as having become obsessive after the divorce. Not violent necessarily, but unable to accept that it was really over. A friend of Crystal's put it more bluntly. Steve wanted things his way, and he wanted them now. Steve and Paul both agreed to take polygraph tests. Paul's results were never confirmed. Steve failed his.
Personally, I told her myself, he reminds me of Hannibal Lecter, and he creeped me out really bad.
What about him creeping?
I don't know.
I mean, she liked him.
She loved him, but she liked weird guys. I don't trust him. You know.
What does Paul have to gain by hurting her?
I don't know, unless he gets my vote.
What does Steve have to gain by?
I honestly believe Steve loved her to the point of no return. You know, I mean, he said he didn't do this.
And I'm gonna tell you, I'll be up real truthfully. I believe someone killed her.
Yeah.
I believe I'm working a murder right now.
Yes.
But I just got to figure out who did it and where she's at.
10 days after Crystal disappeared, the rain finally started to let up. Floodwaters began to recede, and for the first time since the hurricane hit, investigators could get back out into the field and start piecing together what had actually happened around that motel parking lot. They pulled surveillance footage from the area, first from the motel itself, then from a gas station next door. The motel cameras showed Crystal's car being left there at 6:37 in the morning on August 26th, the day after she vanished. Someone got out of it. The figure resembled Steve, but the footage wasn't sharp enough to say for certain. Then they looked at the gas station video, taken about 5 hours later. It showed a man pulling in, getting out of his car, and forcing something down into a trash can, pushing it in hard enough that it wouldn't be easily seen. He lingered for a moment, looking back in the direction of the motel more than once. This time, the footage was clear enough. It was Steve. Investigators also noticed something else, a bicycle at Steve's house that hadn't been there before. When they asked him about his whereabouts that morning, he told them he'd been at Walmart, so they checked. And there, on the store's security cameras, was a man matching Steve's description, hood up against the rain, paying cash for a bicycle. The same kind of bicycle now sitting at his house. From the store, that same figure could be seen riding through the rain, heading in the direction of the motel where Crystal's car had been left. It was circumstantial. No clear face on camera, no card payment to trace. But it was enough to make investigators certain they were looking at the right person. They just needed him to talk. By early September, 2 weeks into the search, there was still no sign of Crystal. Her phone hadn't been used, her bank cards hadn't been touched, and the district attorney handling the case had quietly reached her own conclusion. She believed Crystal was dead.
I know they've been looking for her for weeks now. What can you tell us?
Well, we checked in with them. They say there's no movement on her bank account or her passport. The sheriff here says that the search area is in West Chambers County and in Baytown rather. They say the thinking is that she's still in this area.
Do I think there's potential foul play involved in it? Yes, I do.
And with each passing day, Sheriff Hawthorne says that concern grows. Crystal McDowell was last heard from on Friday, August 25th, through a text message to her uncle.
Stating that about a billboard her boyfriend had put up for her, and that was it. That was the last time I heard from her.
He immediately reached out for help, and then Hurricane Harvey slammed into the area. Right now, they're combing through surveillance videos from businesses and personal surveillance videos from homes. Loved ones say McDowell has been living in the Legends Bay subdivision with her ex-husband and 2 small children, but had moved on with a new boyfriend.
She was on top of the world. She was she had said herself she was the happiest she had ever been in her life.
And because of that, they don't believe she would have left on her own. And the sheriff says they're looking at several persons of interest, and he says he's confident that answers could be coming soon. Live in Chambers County, I'm Angelica Alvarez for 13.
Investigators made a decision. They petitioned to have Crystal and Steve's 2 youngest children removed from Steve's care and placed with Crystal's aunt. It wasn't just a safety measure. It was designed to apply pressure, to take away the one thing Steve seemed to care most about and see what happened. It worked faster than anyone expected. The day the children were taken, Steve came into the station looking worse than he had in days. Gaunt, exhausted, barely holding together. When investigators told him where his kids were now living, he nearly collapsed. He said he wanted to go home, but that he'd come back the next morning, and that this time, he'd be honest with them. That night, he texted his older daughter, Krista, who was away at Texas A&M. He told her that her younger brother and sister were going to be living somewhere else for a while, and that she probably wouldn't see him again for some time unless she came home first. Krista didn't understand what he meant. She got in her car at 3:30 in the morning and drove straight home. When she arrived, it was still dark. She asked her father directly if he'd had anything to do with Crystal's disappearance. He denied it, at first. But after a few hours together, something shifted. Steve told her that investigators had said if he led them to the body, his punishment would be lighter. Krista pointed out that he'd just told her he didn't know where the body was. He looked at her and said, "What if it's true?" Then he looked away, and he broke down. The next day, September 9th, Steve went back to the station, just as he'd promised. This time he made a request before he'd say anything more. He wanted the death penalty taken off the table. He wanted to see his children one more time. In exchange, he said, he would tell them everything, and he would take them to Crystal's body. Investigators agreed. What Steve described was an argument that morning.
And you've confronted her at different times about those affairs.
Confronted her. And she told me to stay out of business. She says that I'm not dominant enough in the bedroom. That's what she says.
Were you fighting when that happened?
Yeah.
Is that when she told you that she didn't love you anymore?
Yeah.
And did you snap? Did you mean to suffocate her?
No.
It just happened?
I didn't know that either. I love her.
And how did you suffocate her?
Squeezed her. Put my arm around her like this.
Okay, like a chokehold or something? Did she say anything when that was going on, or did you fight, or what happened?
She said I was scaring her.
How did you eventually know that she was no longer alive?
Stuff food.
August 25th, the day Crystal vanished. He said Crystal told him she didn't love him anymore, that she didn't want anything to do with him. He said something in him broke, and he grabbed her from behind. He told them it happened fast, and that it wasn't something he'd planned. He said he didn't mean for it to end the way it did. Afterward, he wrapped her body and placed it in the trunk of her own car. The same car that would later be found abandoned at the motel, left unlocked in the hope that someone would steal it and the evidence would disappear along with it. 15 days after Crystal went missing, Steve led investigators to a wooded, marshy area in the western part of the county. It took hours of work just to clear a path through the brush. And there, they found her. Stephen Wayne McDowell, 44 years old, was arrested and charged with murder. If Crystal had been reported missing just 1 day later, if Harvey had already been tearing through the region, investigators believe her car very likely would have been stolen before anyone thought to look at it twice. Without that car, without those cameras, there's a real chance this case would never have been solved at all.
Murder case in Houston, a mother of two vanishing just hours before Hurricane Harvey hit. Now, her ex-husband is under arrest.
Steve McDowell heads to court today, charged with first-degree murder. Not only do police say they found Crystal McDowell's body, but in a surprising turn, they say her ex-husband confessed. Now police say after questioning her ex-husband for days, Steve McDowell tearfully admitted to murdering the mother of his two children.
Once I got that call, I was in a state of shock and denial. So just trying to deal with it the best way I can. I had my suspicions from day one. I can't say that I was honestly that surprised, given the arguments they had the week prior of her missing.
Wearing shackles, Stephen McDowell seemed to hold back tears as he appeared in court for the first time.
Everything in the investigation leads to us that he acted alone.
Police finally located the 37-year-old's body in a wooded area Saturday. The hurricane hampered the search effort. McDowell's uncle, Jeff Walters, had reported her missing.
Her parents died when she was young, and I guess I'm the closest one to her in the family. She's like my daughter.
Her autopsy was performed yesterday, and right now we still don't have a motive. Charlie?
Omar, thanks.
Steve's defense team didn't dispute that he'd killed her. Instead, they tried something called a sudden passion defense, a distinction under Texas law reserved for killings committed in the heat of an intense emotional moment rather than planned in advance. If a jury accepted it, Steve's sentence could have been reduced dramatically, down to as little as 2 years. On the stand, Steve claimed the moment had started as a hug that spiraled out of control. The prosecution saw it differently. They argued this wasn't a sudden loss of control at all, that Steve had spent months unable to accept the divorce, resentful of Crystal's new relationship, and angry about losing his financial support after she cut him off. They argued the anger had been building for a long time before that morning. To make their case, prosecutors called an unlikely witness, Crystal and Steve's own daughter, Maui. In a videotaped statement, she described watching her parents argue that morning. She said her mother told her father she was leaving and taking the children with her. She described her father pushing her mother down and refusing to let her go. She said she watched him place his hands over her mother's face. She said her mother tried to call for help, but she couldn't hear her. Afterward, she said, her father told her to stay in her room and not tell anyone what she'd seen. The jury deliberated for a little over 3 hours. They rejected the sudden passion defense. Stephen McDowell was found guilty of murder and sentenced to 50 years in prison. He won't be eligible for parole until 2042. Crystal's uncle Jeff, who had raised her since she was a child and who made that first call to police, said afterward that he hoped Steve never made it out of prison. Paul, her boyfriend, said he sometimes wondered whether the timing of the hurricane had been part of the plan all along, a window Steve could use to cover his tracks. The 2 youngest children went to live with Crystal's aunt. Both of their parents were gone now, in different ways, and it fell to their family to explain, as gently as they could, what had happened. Friends of Crystal's remembered her as someone who had rebuilt her life more than once, who had survived a hard childhood and come out the other side determined to give her own kids something better. That's the version of her worth remembering. Not just how her story ended, but everything she'd already overcome to get as far as she had. A few things about this case are worth sitting with, beyond the details of the investigation itself. The first is that the warning signs here were documented, not hidden. Months before Crystal died, she went to the police herself. That report didn't prevent what happened, but it existed. A reminder that threats made during a breakup are worth taking seriously in the moment they happen, not just in hindsight. The second is about timing. Research on domestic violence consistently shows that the period during and immediately after a separation is one of the most dangerous stretches in an abusive relationship. This case is one real specific example of a pattern that shows up again and again in cases like it. The third is about how fragile an investigation can be. A single hurricane very nearly buried this case for good, not because investigators gave up, but because the physical world made it almost impossible to keep looking. What eventually solved it wasn't a dramatic break. It was patient, methodical work, picked back up the moment it became possible again. And the last thing worth remembering is the 2 children at the center of this. They didn't ask to be part of this story, and they'll carry it with them far longer than anyone watching this video will. Whatever else gets said about this case, they deserve to be talked about with care. That's the story of Crystal McDowell.